Welcome back to Nothing But the Truth. I'm your host, Trudy Stern, and I'm so thrilled to welcome my good friend and good friend of Israel and a remarkable leader, Ambassador David Friedman, to Nothing But the Truth. Throughout his tenure as the U.S. Ambassador to Israel, David Friedman played a historic role in strengthening the unbreakable bond between America and the Jewish state. Under his leadership, the United States recognized Jerusalem as Israel's eternal and undivided capital and moved the U.S. Embassy there, a bold and long overdue decision that changed the course of history. He was a key architect of the Abraham Accords, bringing unprecedented peace and normalization between Israel and its Arab neighbors. He also championed Israeli sovereignty in Judea and Samaria, ensured U.S. recognition of Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights, and stood firm against efforts to delegitimize Israel on the world stage. Ambassador Friedman's unwavering commitment to the Jewish people and to the land of Israel was not just political, it was deeply personal. He brought passion, courage, and integrity to his role, always putting truth above politics. In addition to all this, he introduced me to my husband 43 years ago, and we're still talking. So please welcome my very dear friend, Ambassador Friedman, to Nothing But the Truth. Welcome, David.
What a delight to be on your show. I'm so proud of what you've done with it. And look, to say we go back a long time would be a pretty gross understatement. I don't want to say how long because I don't want to give away how old we are, but it's a long time, a long, long time. And our parents were the closest of friends. Your mom should live and be well. And I think my father was your rabbi, and yeah, we have a lot of history. We could talk about that for the entire show, but I'm sure we'll touch on other things as well.
We actually do have a lot of history, and I'm quite sure that our fathers are up there together as the best of friends that they always were, and smiling down at what you've accomplished and what I'm hoping to highlight about what you've accomplished.
Well, thank you. I hope so too.
So let's start right in. So much has happened on the stage recently. With regard to the whole Gaza plan that President Trump has put forth. So what do you think about that? Could you tell us about that?
Well, I'm trying to breathe because it's coming at us, at such a breakneck pace. I mean, the president gets into office, and in such a short period of time, first he lifts the sanctions that Biden imposed on Israeli settlers. He unlocks the weaponry that's supposed to be heading towards Israel that Israel had waited for. He's fighting anti-Semitism on 6 different fronts. He has Prime Minister Netanyahu as his first guest of any world leader in the Oval Office, and then he makes this really, breathtaking announcement about Gaza that a lot of us really hoped for, but I think we were all kind of too timid to bring up, which is that Gaza has to be evacuated. You can make that case on humanitarian grounds. You could also make it on geopolitical grounds. And then, after it's evacuated, it could get rebuilt in a way that brings, massive amount of opportunity, employment, prosperity, dignity to the region. So I'm a huge fan of this plan, and I have been hitting it wherever I go on news and articles, media, social media. And I think it's just brilliant. And I don't want to just speak for half an hour. I want to have more of a conversation. But just on this point, what I would say to you is what President Trump observed is that when it comes to Gaza, it's a war. It's 5 years of kind of relative quiet, and then it's a war again. It goes back and forth. There's never been a successful means by which to de-radicalize Gaza. No one's ever been able to come up with an idea. And people always ask me, it's an ideology. It's not just a terrorist group. How do you defeat it? And my answer is, look, Nazism was an ideology. The Japanese had an ideology in World War II. They became our closest friends. And the only reason is because we defeated them so decisively. They surrendered and we started from scratch. Now, Hamas has never been forced to surrender. The way that they would calculate their defeat and their surrender is when they lose their land. And so what the president is saying is, you take everyone out of Gaza, you move them elsewhere. And once that happens, regardless of what happens next, I mean, it's 25 miles of beachfront in Gaza. You can make beautiful hotels and condos. But as soon as the people of Gaza are out and they are resettled someplace else, you can prove definitively that Hamas has lost. Everybody will look at Hamas and say, you know what? You started this war and look what you did. You lost your land. And that's the way that the radical Islamists calibrate defeat. And so I'm hugely bullish on this. We gotta keep pushing it forward. I've been writing on it, again, encouraging other people to write about it. And I think it's really the right idea for the right time.
But do you think it's logistically possible? I mean, first of all,
Sure.
who is going to take them? Egypt, Jordan, they've already seemingly don't want them. They don't seem to want to leave, even though they're under the worst of conditions. They don't seem to want to leave.
Well, so look, Hamas doesn't want to leave because this is their caliphate. They don't want to leave, and if they don't leave, that's okay, because if we're down to 50,000 terrorists and sympathizers, Israel will have no challenge whatsoever to defeat them quickly, because there won't be any human shields to deal with. The rest, they think they do want to leave. I mean, the average person living in Gaza under Hamas rule is desperate to leave, and they were desperate to leave when I was ambassador. I used to meet with them. At some point, about halfway through my term, we expanded my role to include Judea, Samaria, and Gaza. I met with people who live in Gaza, and I would talk about the conditions there, and all they said to me is, "Get me out of here! Like, just get me out of here. I don't really want to talk about Gaza. I want to talk about how you're going to get me out of here." So that's not no. But your first question is a good one. Who's going to take them? And look, there's a lot. I would leave this to Trump. He's very persuasive. We have a huge amount of leverage. Jordan will take some. Egypt will take some. But there's 30, 40 Muslim countries out there. There's a lot of countries in North Africa. We can get them out, out of the Mediterranean and kind of head all across Northern Africa. There are lots of spots to drop them off. A lot of them need money. A lot of them will be happy to get on better terms with America. So I think it's possible. And I just think it's I think there's no option, meaning, like, it's not like they're living under circumstances now which would work. I mean, they're living in a strip that's full of rubble, unexploded bombs. It's dangerous. Landmines. I mean, it's a dangerous place to live. So I think they have to leave regardless.
So I had seen some articles that Jordan and Egypt themselves are very teetering in terms of their own stability, and that taking in a lot of Palestinians could actually be dangerous for Israel, because those regimes can topple. So do you see that as a problem?
It's a different problem for Egypt than for Jordan and for Egypt. Look, in Egypt, they don't like these people because they're essentially an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood is the Egyptian, outlaw organization that threatens al-Sisi and the rest of the regime. But remember, in Egypt, they had an election. They elected Mohammed Morsi. Mohammed Morsi was a Islamic Brotherhood apologist. He put in all his Muslim Brotherhood colleagues, and al-Sisi then was the head of the army. He took over the country. He took over the government. He quickly dispatched all the troublemakers, and he's still in charge. And so Egypt has shown that it has the ability to deal with radical Islamists, and so and they have lots and lots of space in the Sinai to move them. I understand they don't want to, but I don't think it will topple Egypt. Now, Jordan is, I think, more fragile. Jordan is also Israel's longest border. Jordan, I think, I think the king there is even less of a legitimate leader, and I think they have bigger issues there, and he'll probably take less. And Israel doesn't want to destabilize Jordan, so I mean, there is something to to going easy on them. They don't deserve it, but I understand why to go easy on them. But again, 30, 40 other countries out there that could be helpful. A lot of them are going to want to be on good terms with America. I mean, Trump is, very much, creating this dichotomy with, You're with us or you're against us. And this may be one of those things you have to do to be with us, because, look, remember, I mean, America, largest economy in the world, largest military in the world. Dollar is the reserve currency of the world. We can make people's lives, really, really, prosperous. So we can cut them off and make countries miserable. And Trump is, the one guy really prepared to do that, and he'll get what he wants. And so I think if he pushes this hard enough, we'll find a way to offload the Palestinians.
Well, I saw your article, the article that you were the source for in the Wall Street Journal, which discussed relocation and the criticism of it. And it was really an incredible article because it highlighted the double standard that there is towards Israel with regard to this. Could you just let our listeners know about that point?
Well, look, I mean, there have been lots of wars over the last 100 years. And those wars invariably create lots of refugees. Many of those refugees are less in harm's way than the people living in Gaza, who, as I said earlier, are living, side by side buildings that are about to collapse in unexploded ordnance. So all those refugees over the course of the last 100 years, I mean, they've been humanitarian crises, but they found homes. Like Syria, right? Syria had a civil war. 5.5 million Syrians were offloaded to different countries, other Arab and Muslim countries. The author who wrote this article in the Wall Street Journal, he actually was an expert on India and Pakistan, and so he was speaking about refugees in South Asia and in Africa. And look, there are just tens of cases of refugees who can no longer live in their country. They move to wherever they move to. They settle there. And that's just, unfortunately, the world of refugees. The only refugees in history, certainly the last 100 years, the only refugees who have been unable to settle down and find homes elsewhere are the Palestinians. And it's for two reasons. I mean, the minor reason is that nobody wants them. Okay, that's true. A lot of people don't want them. But the bigger reason is that it's been part of the strategy within the Arab world, for the last 75 years, to force Israel to choke on the Palestinians, to make this problem bigger and bigger and bigger for Israel until they throw up their hands and say, we give up. And, over the history of Israel, there have been times when the people of Israel, some of them have said, look, this is too big a problem. Let's let them have their own state, their own ground, their own, listen, Sharon left Gaza, and Rabin was willing to give certain towns in Judea and Samaria to the Palestinians. And that's brought nothing but trouble. I mean, it's never been a solution. Look at Gaza. Gaza, I remember in 2005 when Sharon evacuated Gaza, the Bush administration went to the Palestinian leadership and said, look, here's your chance. Israel's leaving. We didn't even tell them to leave. They're leaving on their own. They're going to leave. You're going to have this beautiful strip, 25 miles of beachfront. It's entirely yours. It's completely Palestinian. Now, you make something of this. You bring some prosperity here. You bring safety here. You live side by side with your neighbors. And this will be the template for you to extrapolate to Judea and Samaria. You'll have a Palestinian state in both places. Okay, that was that was the encouragement of Condoleezza Rice. And they failed. They didn't just fail in 2023. They failed in 2006, in 2007, in 2008. They failed every time. And then in 2023, I think was their ultimate failure. They put the nail in the coffin on a two-state solution. And I think when President Trump said this past week that America is going to take over Gaza, I think that was the last nail in the two-state coffin. And thank God, because the two-state solution is dead. It's never going to come back. And it would have been the most existential of existential threats to the state of Israel.
You actually really wrote extensively about that in your book.
Yep, I did.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, but what I wrote in the book was it was almost a parallel point as well. Meaning, okay, you want to protect Israel. You can't have a Palestinian state in Judea and Samaria because these people were cheering and supporting Hamas in the rape, torture, kidnapping, dismemberment, and burning of Jewish people, right? So these are people that cannot be given their own state because they'll use that state as a platform to kill us, and they'll kill us from a proximity towards, Jerusalem, Haifa, and Tel Aviv. That's way closer even than from Gaza. So that's the defensive argument, but there's also equally an optimistic argument, which is, if you look at, the track record of all the countries in the region, the only country that has demonstrated any ability to empower a minority, in this case, an Arab minority, is Israel. Like you have like 5 or 10 really, really good academic institutions in Israel. The Arab citizens of Israel, 20% of the population, more than 20% of the students at all these elite universities are Arab. And they go on to become doctors and lawyers and bankers. And, I have a friend, your husband probably knows him too, who was the chairman of the largest bank in Israel. And he's a Arab Israeli citizen Muslim. I mean, they have, advanced to the highest levels of science and commerce. And so if you really want to create a template for Palestinians in Judea and Samaria to improve their lives, live under Israeli sovereignty. I mean, it's the only country that actually can empower a minority that has the academia, the technology, the work ethics to really, improve and bring prosperity. So from my perspective, the book, makes 2 points. Number one, if you want to protect Israel, don't let there be a Palestinian state. The other point, though, is if you just care about the Palestinians, same point. Don't create a Palestinian state. Enable this territory to live under Israeli sovereignty. I think we're moving in that direction. It's not an overnight thing, but I think we're moving in that direction.
Do you think the same thing that President Trump is putting forth for Gaza, he will also do the same in the West Bank?
Well, I hope so. I have no inside info on that. If I did, I wouldn't share it anyway. But I hope so. I really hope so. He was asked at a press conference about annexation of Judea and Samaria, and he said, we're looking at it, and we'll have something to say in a few weeks. I'm not sure if that's going to happen on schedule or happen at all. But it's there's really no other choice at this point. I mean, first of all, the Palestinians themselves will never accept a state that doesn't include Gaza. Gaza for them is their crown jewel. It's the 25 miles of beachfront. It's their exit to the world, right? I mean, right now, Judea and Samaria is landlocked, right? It's between Jordan and Green Line. Gaza is open to the whole world. I mean, it's beautiful sunset facing Western Mediterranean facing, beachfront. You can build docks there and you can get out. So there's no chance that in the Palestinians' mind, a two-state solution can live in harmony with the president's plans. And so I'm hoping that, given that, we extrapolate this to a Jewish state, one Jewish state, as I say in my book, from the river to the sea. Everybody's screaming from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. I would adopt that, just change the word Palestine to Israel, and that I'm on board. River to the sea, Israel will be free.
Well, to all of our listeners who are tuning in late, we are here with Ambassador David Friedman, and I just want to say that his book, One State, is
One Jewish State.
One Jewish State is a phenomenal read and really does go into this extensively. And I urge everyone to buy the book and read the book. I'd love to move on to the next topic that I want to cover, and that is the ceasefire.
Yep.
So can you tell us, what are your thoughts about this? I mean, Bibi actually contradicted Trump's statements. Trump came on very loudly that he wants everyone. He's not interested in 3 hostages here, 2 hostages there. He wants everybody out by Saturday or else.
Yep.
And Bibi now said if they release the 3 hostages, then the ceasefire will stand. So I can't imagine that that Bibi's contradicting him. So can you give us some insight?
Look, I think Trump is right in the sense that the deal should never have been this dribbling out of people. And I think that when he saw the last 3 men come out, looking like they had survived the Holocaust. I think the idea that we would agree to perpetuating that misery. I think he spoke, and he spoke from a place of emotion. I think more than anything, he said, "Get them out of here. I mean, they're all being tortured. I mean, we can't make a deal that permits ongoing torture of Israelis, of Jewish people." And that's where he was coming from. Now, unfortunately, Hamas couldn't care less what anybody thinks. I mean, they have very little leverage left, and most of it has to do with the hostages. So if Hamas says, "Look, we're going to give you, it's either three or nothing," Bibi's going to take three, because three is still better than zero. I think he knows. I think we all know that this is heading back towards war. Phase two is, look, I said this back when the deal was announced. Phase two is meaningless, because phase two, in order to actualize any more releases under phase two, Israel and Hamas have to agree to a long-term end of the war. And Hamas is insisting upon staying in Gaza, and Israel is insisting upon them being eradicated. I mean, Hamas is not going to agree to their own destruction. And absent that, there's not going to be any more hostages released in phase two. So I think what Netanyahu is probably thinking to himself is, look, let me get three out. We're a week or two away from this thing blowing up. When it does, we're going to go to war. We're going to decimate the rest of Hamas. We're going to try to rescue as many hostages as we can, if we can. But, I think in the short term, I'm assuming he called the president and said, listen, I'm going to get these three out, and then I'm going to adopt your view. One thing, I think people need to understand is that this deal is not Trump's deal. This is a deal that was done back in May, that Netanyahu agreed to with his team, with Hamas, with the Qataris. Very adverse negotiating circumstances. And at the end of that deal, Hamas pulled out, right? Israel was prepared to go forward. So when Steve Witkoff comes in and he's got, a couple of days to try to, push this over the finish line, he can't go back and, reinvent the wheel. He's sort of stuck with this deal. So that's the deal. But I think Trump now, is growing increasingly uncomfortable with it, because he sees, number one, it's never going to be actualized, because Hamas is just never going to agree to their own destruction. And second of all, because he sees that these are, as vile and horrible as Hamas is, they're even worse. They're even worse. They're truly Nazis in every way that word could be imagined. And I think what we're ultimately looking at, again, I don't know whether it's this Saturday or in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, but we're all looking at is a massive Israeli re-entry into Gaza without any handcuffs, without any, Biden or Blinken or Austin telling him, don't go here, don't go there. I think they're using this time productively to plan the attack, and I think we will see, very likely, the complete eradication of Hamas from the Gaza Strip, God willing.
Unfortunately, if they do go in and do this eradication, what's going to happen to the rest of the hostages? But
I don't know, but I mean, it's not. We're not choosing between a negotiated settlement and a war. We're choosing between. We're not choosing anything. I mean, the settlement is the only way. The hostages could be saved at this point, I believe. Again, after the deal inevitably blows up, the only way they can be saved is if they're rescued by the Israelis. Which I can hope and dream that happens, but it's not realistic to expect that Israel will leave Hamas in charge of the Gaza Strip. That may be painful, and I'm sure it's very painful to these poor families, and we all feel for them, and I can't say enough about how much I grieve for them and what they're going through. But there's also, there are 10 million people living in Israel that are entitled to victory. They're entitled to win this war. There are, hundreds of Israeli soldiers who've lost their lives. There are parents of children who are no longer there, who gave their lives so that Israel would never again have to face this war from Hamas. They sacrificed their lives in exchange for a victory, not in exchange for, for more of the same in 5 years. So it's heartbreaking, but again, the only possibility now, again, maybe Hamas says in 2 weeks, you know what? We're scared of Trump. We're going to get killed. Get us on a boat and send us to Tunisia, like Arafat did, or send us to, to Sudan or Somalia or wherever, and we're just going to go, and maybe and we'll give you the hostages in exchange. And if that happens, that would be wonderful. That would be wonderful. But I'm not, I'm not holding my breath.
So Assad has fallen. I'm sure I can't even believe what has taken place in
Yeah,
such a short amount of time. He's gone. The new guy now wearing a suit saying he's peace loving, but like, I think that's a little suspicious.
right.
So we are dealing with the issues in Gaza, but yet it seems like on the Syrian border, some very troubling things could be unfolding.
Well, look, I think I'm a perpetual optimist, so I never bet against Israel. Look, they've decapitated Hezbollah. They've pretty much sanitized Syria. Now that doesn't mean that 10 years from now we're not in trouble there, but we're looking pretty good in the short term, both in terms of the Lebanese border and the Syrian border. We have uh, destroyed the Iranian air defenses. We proved to the Iranians that Israel can take a punch. I mean, look, no other country in the world has ever been the recipient of 300 ballistic missiles in one shot, and Israel absorbed this, and not one person was killed. So the Iranians are on their heels, especially now with Trump, especially with him restoring sanctions. Syria, they're not going to. I don't think they want to mess with Israel. Anything, not anytime soon. The Lebanese are trying very hard to regain control of their country. Um, it's a big lift. I'm not betting on that yet. Remember, the communities in Israel in the north haven't. No one's gone home yet. They're not back in Kiryat Shmona or Ma'alot. So it ain't over. But I would say that Israel is stronger today than they've ever been in their history. I mean, they have certainly since the Six-Day War. And what I like to say is that Israel hasn't won a war since 1967, and because they haven't won a war, and because what's happened is they get into fights, and then the world comes in, mostly Americans, and they force Israel to sign some piece of paper with a ceasefire that means different things to different people, and ultimately 5 years later they're back in the same place, and it's all because Israel doesn't win. And I think we're at a point where we're on the verge of victory on a whole bunch of fronts. And if we could do that, and we have the right partner in America to do that, whether it's Iran, whether it's Syria, whether it's Lebanon, whether it's Hamas, whether it's Judea and Samaria, I mean, we got the right partner, and we're way ahead right now in terms of what Israel did on its own, even in spite of Biden. So I'm optimistic. I mean, I think that, this is a very tough part of the world, but I'm optimistic that this could all end up in a way that really helps Israel's security.
Well, I love the optimism. I think that's really amazing. Do you think that Israel will have the support of America to actually take out the nuclear program in Iran?
Yeah, I don't really doubt it. Yeah, I mean, look, Trump is going to reinstall. He's already, reimposed the really tough sanctions. The Iranian rial is at the lowest valuation in its history. I mean, it's essentially worthless. They have a worthless currency, which means they have to somehow, get other currencies, primarily dollars, and we're going to keep them from getting dollars. So their economy's in shambles. It's going to get worse with the sanctions. Their air defenses have scared nobody. Israel's got these 1,000-pound bombs that they either got them or they're just about to arrive. And Trump has said, look, I'm not letting Iran have a nuclear weapon. And Trump has a track record of being pretty aggressive with Iran. Remember, he was the guy that authorized the assassination of Qasem Soleimani. So Iran has no reason to doubt Trump's resolve. Pete Hegseth, Mike Waltz, Marco Rubio, these are all guys who I think agree that Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. So I have no doubt. I mean, I think it's a question of when. And the only question I have is, will Iran get up and say, and they should do this. Will Iran get up and say, within the next couple of months, look, we're out of business with the nukes. We see that we have no choice. We're boxed in, and come on in. We'll give you access to whatever you want, so you can police it. I'm doubtful, but they should do that. That would be a smart thing for them to do. But so Trump will give this a chance for a few months, and then I don't really have a doubt that the response to the Iranian nuclear program will be overwhelming, and probably set them back decades.
Well, that's really good. That's great to hear. I don't see the Iranian regime actually doing what you think they should do. I can't
Yeah, I agree.
see Khamenei doing that, um, but that would be really amazing.
Mhm.
Lastly, what I just want to touch upon is the Abraham Accords. This is something that you actually were the architect of. You created it. This was your brainchild. So, do you see that, being expanded? Do you see Saudi coming in on that? What are your
I
thoughts?
do, I do, and I do, and I just want to not correct you, but add. I mean, there were others involved too, especially my friend Jared Kushner, who worked with me very closely on this, and Avi Berkowitz and Mike Pompeo. I mean, we had a few of us were, and of course President Trump. But look, I think Saudi's going to come in. The question is going to be on what terms, and there are a lot of complicated terms. There are complications regarding Israel. Saudi has said we want to do this only if you have a Palestinian state. Israel's not going to agree to that. There's no way the government of Israel agrees to that. I would never support. I don't care how valuable Saudi normalization is, not at the expense of a Palestinian state, which I think is existential to Israel's going forward. They're going to want stuff from America too. They're going to want some, I don't know what kind of weaponry they want, whether it's a defense treaty that's going to require Senate approval. I mean, it's complicated, but the upside with Saudi coming in is enormous if we can get them in on the right terms. Those discussions are very far advanced. So I would bet on something with Saudi in the next 6 months. You saw that Trump's now going to meet with Putin to talk about Ukraine, but he's meeting him in Saudi Arabia, of all places. So, I think Saudi will have a large role in foreign policy. I hope that's all for the good. I'll be looking out for Israel during this process, and I mean others will as well. And let's hope for a good outcome.
Well, David, this has been amazing. Your insights are fantastic. Sadly, we are at the end of our time together, and hopefully won't be the last time that you'll be on Nothing But the Truth. But it's been an honor to have you on the show. Your unwavering dedication to Israel and the incredible work you've done will leave a lasting impact for generations to come. Thank you for sharing your insights, your wisdom, and your passion with us today. And I really do hope, David, Ambassador Friedman, that you will come back. To my listeners, thank you for tuning in and being a part of this conversation. Make sure to tune in every Thursday night at 9:30 for another episode of Nothing But the Truth. If you've missed any part of tonight's show or you want to catch up on past episodes, you can find them wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Trudy Stern. Truth matters. Freedom depends upon it. Until next time, stay informed, stay vigilant, and keep seeking nothing but the truth.